when I had burnt out in corporate, and I ended up quitting my corporate job, starting this business. And the lessons that I hadn't learned is really to set up some of those boundaries, those work-life balance boundaries, as well as the people pleasing and the perfectionist mindsets that I had adopted. And I had really subscribed a lot to that hustle culture when we first started this business, right? Where if I work really hard, I'm going to rise to the top. And I was really watching a lot of those entrepreneurs, and it burnt me out really quick. And I felt like I traded that 9 to 5 or, 7 to 7 or whatever for a 24/7. Welcome back to the Dennison Download. This is, I believe, our third episode, our third real episode. It's exciting.
This is real now. It's actually happening. Let's do this.
I know. Ooh. So this week I am really excited because, well, first, before we dive into this, I want to talk a little bit about these topics that we're talking about. They're all stuff that we're in the process of learning, right? So we're not experts at all. We had an episode about people pleasing. It's something that we're still working on. Actually, funny story, when we recorded that episode about people pleasing, what happened afterwards?
Patterns of people pleasing arose.
It did. Right after we finished recording that episode, we left our offices and both of us kind of fell into people pleasing patterns, right?
Immediately. Yeah, it was kind of harsh because and it wasn't anything that was noted. It was just kind of a subconscious thing that happened. And about a half hour later, we both realized what was happening. We're like, oh my goodness, this is nuts. We need to stop this.
Yeah, it was so interesting. I think you went to go work out in the garage, which is now a gym, which we transformed it to.
Yes.
And I could tell something was bothering you. And what it was, I believe, was we wanted to make dinner, you wanted to work out. It was later because we were recording the podcast than we typically eat. And I think that was kind of stressing you out because you were worried that maybe I was going to get upset that we were eating later, right?
Yeah, I was really just trying to figure out how I was going to accomplish the logistics of the things that I wanted to do
Yeah.
with what had to be done.
Mhm.
And it was all happening in my head. And I had a partner I could have talked to about it and really could have walked our way through it. But instead, I just went to work, started preparing dinner, started preparing smoothies, and all the while thinking of all these things that I wanted to do. And I was frustrated because I felt I didn't have the energy or the ability to do them all.
Mhm.
And I didn't even think of using my tools. I didn't even think of having a conversation with you about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we made a post about this recently on our social media. We talk about people pleasing a lot. And one of the interesting thing about people pleasing is there's kind of a sinister part about people pleasing that we didn't talk about, is that it can be a manipulation thing. And people who are people pleasing are not trying to do this, but you're trying, in this scenario, you were trying to meet the expectations that you had of mine, right? That you had created in your head without
Mhm.
talking to me. And it's so interesting that we ended up sitting down to dinner after you worked out. We talked it out. We laughed about it, and we're like, wow, this is kind of the stuff that we should be recording for the podcast. Because and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when we talk about these things, I want anyone who's listening to this podcast to realize we're not talking about it in the fact that, hey, look at all these things that we've overcome and we've transformed and we've become experts at. No, not at all, right? The reason why we're talking about it is because it's something that we're working on transforming for ourselves. And maybe you might be struggling with too. And let's talk about it and talk about why it's so hard for us and the real life implications of trying to transform and go along the journey with us, right? Because I think that that's more important than actually seeing someone who's completely transformed. This is not a problem for them anymore. And then when I look at them on stage or listen to them on a podcast or a TV show or whatever, it's almost like, oh God, that's great. But what about the journey? How did you get there, right?
Yeah, let me see some bumps along the way.
Yeah. So I want to be able to share that on this podcast. And I wanted to be honest with anyone who's listening here, is that we recorded a podcast about people pleasing and then immediately fell into people pleasing habits right after. Um, and it was interesting because as you were trying to people please and make sure that I was happy when it came to our daily routine, I saw that you were upset and I started trying to people please and find things that would make you happy at the same time. And it was a very interesting dynamic.
Hmm.
So, not about what we were talking about today, but listen, for anyone who is listening along with us to the Dennison Download, we're going to be talking about some heavy topics, right? Some topics that we're still working on that might be raw nerves or, tough subjects for us as well. And we want to be honest with you as we go through this, as we're transforming, as we're learning about these things as well. So, with that being said, something that we've been working on a lot this year is one of my new mottos:
What's that?
work hard, rest hard. I don't know why I sang it.
Oh, yeah, I used to listen to that work hard,
Yeah.
play hard song all the time in the gym.
But I changed it a little bit to work hard, rest hard. And it's because I burnt out again this year at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely a struggle, kind of watching you go through that, and really also very proud to watch you go through that, because I watched you really use a lot and lean on a lot of tools that you had, and really were able to overcome and heal a lot of the burnout by really changing your state and really focusing on yourself and how you were feeling and processing emotions, and not being satisfied with just, this is how I am, right? Like you were consistently willing to do the work, and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
What's going on? And you were able to uncover some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, a lot. It was wild. I had burnt out before when I was working in corporate, and I thought I had learned the lessons when that happened before. And apparently the lessons will repeat until you really learn them. And I did learn some lessons when I had burnt out in corporate, and I ended up quitting my corporate job, starting this business. And the lessons that I hadn't learned is really to set up some of those boundaries, those work-life balance boundaries, as well as the people pleasing and the perfectionist mindsets that I had adopted. And I had really subscribed a lot to that hustle culture when we first started this business, right? Where if I work really hard, I'm going to rise to the top. And I was really watching a lot of those entrepreneurs, and it burnt me out really quick. And I felt like I traded that 9 to 5, or 7 to 7 or whatever, for a 24/7. And I remember there were nights right before I felt like I crashed and burned and burnt out again, where I was waking up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, bringing my phone into the bathroom, starting work, and then you were taking the phone and my glasses off at the middle or at the end of the night and tucking me into bed. And I just don't think we're made to work that way.
No, I think a lot of people are figuring that out, that we're really not built to have this constant level of concentration uh, on a specific task or a specific thing for a long time. Um, and while it does work for some to see great results, usually those individuals, they provide balance for themselves in other ways, right? They find ways to carve out those niches of time for themselves where they can they can recharge, and we just don't see that. Like we see the success, we see the comments of the hustle, but we don't see the balance, we don't see the other side of their equation, where they're spending time with family, where they're enjoying good meals, where they're taking it easy at the end of the day, enjoying some good scenery or a nice meal, and or the quiet time that they spend with themselves. We don't ever get that side on social media by and large, and it's because that's not attractive. That's not what people want to see. People don't want to know how you're resting. because they're hustling, they're grinding, they're doing everything they can for themselves. And when they show up and they see you resting, it's like, oh, well, I don't get to do that. And
Yeah. Or it's almost kind of like, I almost want to say it's like the slow way versus the fast way, right? So with the hustle culture, when you see it on social media, it's like, oh man, if I could just put on in like a year of really hard work, or if I could just do this, or oh man, they just did that, right? And look at the success that they had. But it's not sustainable, right? Like that is not sustainable. And what you don't see is all of the other stuff that goes into it, right? And the failing and the mistakes um and the things that need to be done, like the not sexy stuff, right? Like the sexy stuff is the wins and the look at what I've gotten and the awards and all that other fun stuff. But the reason why I burnt out is because I wanted I wanted to help more people. I liked the wins that I was getting. I liked helping more people. I liked getting on TikTok. I liked that dopamine hit that I got when I was getting more views and more comments and all of that stuff that was happening. And what I didn't realize was that a lot of my bad behaviors were kind of playing into that too, right? That people pleasing, right? Where it's like, oh, well, I can just put myself last because someone just commented and they had a question and I can respond to that real quick because it's only going to take me 5 minutes, or someone messaged me and it's only going to take me 5 to 10 minutes and that's okay, I'll respond. Or someone wants to meet with me tonight. All right, that's fine. I'll go ahead and do it. Or this trend is happening on TikTok. I can quickly do a video real quick, right? Well, those 5 minutes add up, right? And if 3 people are asking to meet with me today and 10 people are commenting or messaging, well, all of a sudden, that's 3 to 4 hours of my day that I hadn't planned or budgeted or whatever. And so what I had realized is that I was giving and giving and giving, which is fine. I like to be able to give, but all of a sudden I realized I wasn't giving to myself and my cup was empty. And then I realized when I was giving, I almost wasn't an active player in that because I didn't know what I was saying. I had memory problems, I had focus problems, and I was dropping the ball on a lot of different things. And it became a problem. It became a problem. And one weekend it took me out completely. And I was in excruciating pain and I had to go to the hospital. And then it was months and months and months of tests and x-rays and MRIs and hospitals and doctors and all this other stuff. And I had to stop because I didn't have the time and the energy anymore. And that's a problem because I had that happen to me twice in my life. And I wonder how many high achievers and professionals and leaders out there have had that happen to them too.
I think it's more than we think.
Yeah. Because that's not sexy to talk about, right? It's not sexy for me to come on here and, I feel my cheeks getting hot, but it's not sexy for me to come on here onto a podcast and say, because I've spent nearly 20 years living in a state of anxiety and stress and panic, I now have a spastic colon I have to deal with. I now have a benign tumor that's grown on my liver, right? Like I have these things. I spent months in fear of blood cancer, right? Like none of these things are sexy. No one talks about these things, but I'm going to talk about them because those things, while they're not sexy, they're real and I deal with them every day. And I have to now be very cognizant of my time and my energy because I wasn't for 20 years. And I pushed myself to the limit every day. So on that wonderful and beautiful note, I want to take a quick break because we're going to start, adding an ad space into here. But I want to come back and I want to talk about this because if you're listening to this and this is where you're at, where you are waking up every morning, either in pain or asking yourself, how do I get through this day? How do I do another day? Because every morning you're either waking up anxious or in pain or stressed or just exhausted because you don't know how to get through the day. There is hope. There is ways to change patterns, and there's a way to recognize burnout and things like that. We want to talk about it because I don't wake up that way. I've changed my patterns. I have transformed, and I'm very excited, but it was tough. It was tough. And I want to illuminate some of the things that I've gone through and some of the things that we've transformed, um, because your body will tell you to stop if you don't, right? So let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. If you're ready for a transformation and you're not sure where to start, we suggest looking at where your money comes from. Your career funds the rest of your life. If you're feeling burnt out, unfulfilled, stagnant, or unfulfilled in your career, that can easily start to bleed over to the rest of your life. Most high achievers and leaders are great at what they do, but when it comes to finding that next level or a company that aligns with their values, attempting a job search can be frustrating at least and demoralizing at most. The traditional job search of submitting your resume to job boards only yields about a 2% ROI when it comes to interviews, and it can leave job seekers feeling anxious, rejected, and with feelings of imposter syndrome and low self-worth. At Optimized Career Solutions, we want to help transform your job search. We help by giving you the branding on your resume and LinkedIn profile that sets you apart as the industry leader or professional you are. But we don't stop there. We give you the proven strategies that empower you to be the leader you are in your career within your job search by getting directly connected to decision makers and teaching you how to tell your impactful story to leaders at companies you're excited to work with. Book your free consultation either with myself or Jack at getstarted.optimizedcareersolutions.com. On this free call, we will dive deeper into your career goals with you and show you how we can support you in achieving them without the frustration and rejection most job seekers feel. We're going to also help you transform your mindset and gain invaluable skills that you'll use throughout the rest of your career. The first step to the next chapter in your career is just a couple clicks away. Book your free consultation with us now at getstarted.optimizedcareersolutions.com. Okay, welcome back. Now, I know the top of the show was a little bit heavy, but I want to tell you, Jack, and you know this, and the listeners, something really exciting that happened this week.
What
actually
happened?
I took off for the first time in my business an unplanned day off.
What prompted that?
Well, I was sick. I had an upper respiratory infection, and so last week was the week that I took off a couple of days. The week before, I was really not feeling good. Thought it was allergies. Took the, pushed through, popped the medicine, right? Dayquil and the Mucinex and all that other stuff. Waited the weekend, rested all weekend. On Monday morning, I woke up and it was worse. It just felt worse. And previous Kara would pop the Dayquil, pop the Mucinex, pop ibuprofen, would talk herself up, throw on the makeup, realize that she works from home and Zoom and just push through. And on Monday, I looked at you and I said, I can't do this. I can't do it, because I was staring down the week prior where I pushed myself through it, a weekend where I didn't really rest as well as I wanted to. And I was staring down a busy week and I just knew that I just couldn't do it. I was exhausted. I was sick. And so I canceled my meetings and I rescheduled it. And prior, I just wouldn't have been able to do that. The fear and the anxiety of canceling on people has been paralyzing in the past. And I did it. I just was that sick. I went to the doctors, I got medication, and I ended up taking 2 full days off. And I canceled with people, and everyone was understanding. Like, no one.
The world didn't stop?
It was crazy. It was surprising that the world didn't stop.
Yeah, it seems like we have this idea that if we're not plugged in, if we're not immediately actively doing something, there's no way we can continue to move forward. There's absolutely no way we can stay on track.
Yeah.
And what I found is that, in fact, if I just work efficient and I take more time off and I take more breaks, I actually do better.
Yeah.
I'm more energized. I'm happier. I'm able to better maintain my energy. I'm able to take on more different types of tasks. I'm also able to complete things at a high level because I'm taking more breaks. I'm giving my brain a ability to rebound throughout the day, because as being an entrepreneur, you got to jump in and do so many different things, right? You have to be accountable to it all. And sometimes being accountable to it all and concentrating, thinking about it all, that can eventually just lead to not being productive. It can lead to basically energy leaks in the brain, where now you're no longer able to show up the way you were. You don't have the motivation to do it. You don't have the energy to do it because you never took that break for your brain, right? Because you had mentioned you were working 7 to 7 when you were in corporate. You went to that 24/7, 365 as an entrepreneur, and showing up on TikTok, showing up for our clients, getting emails, getting prospective clients, all of these things just constantly around the clock. Your brain was basically just a nonstop support center,
Yeah.
constantly on call,
Yeah.
constantly serving these clients, and your brain never got a chance to shut off. So it was no wonder you were having trouble concentrating. No wonder you were having trouble remembering what you were talking about and all these other areas, because studies have shown that these are the things people struggle with when they're never letting the brain shut off. And unfortunately, we also had to learn new ways to relax,
Yeah.
right? The go-tos weren't good anymore. We could no longer could do social media scrolling at the end of the day to help kind of relax and go into the end of the day, because now social media was a form of work. Was
Yeah.
a
Yeah. TikTok scrolling was work for me. It was, market research and yeah. And so what did we do? Right? Because I had to make changes as a leader in my business, as the CEO, as someone who was in every aspect of my business. I had to make changes. And so, because I want to give some actionable stuff that people can make, but I want to also tell people what I did as well. So for me, we hired people. So thankfully, we had hired a fantastic business coach. Shout out Ryan. Fantastic business coach. One of the first things that he did was he had us develop our 10-year vision. And tenure from now, Kara is not in every aspect of my business, right? She's not answering every email. She's not, in every aspect of marketing and all that other stuff. So I had to really tap into tenure, Kara, and let go of a lot of the things that I was frankly controlling, right? Because when you start your own business, it's your baby. It is your baby. And if you are starting a business and you're in the first year, you are in every aspect of your business. You might not have the funds or the ability to scale and hire people, but I was at that point and I hadn't done it yet. And I did at that point because I had to. So I hired a marketing director who was fantastic. I hired a marketing coordinator and I handed over all of my marketing. The good news is that I had filmed like 500 TikToks in that period where I was burning out. And so they were able to take all of that incredible content and syndicate it across Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of this great stuff while I was able to take a break. I hired a coach. For our coaching program who actually specializes in burnout. She helped heal me, helped me heal by giving me tools. And now she helps my clients heal, which is fantastic. Rebecca, shout out Rebecca. And then what we did is we figured out what else was on my plate, delegated that out. Shout out to you, Jack, for giving or taking over a lot of the sales and welcoming clients in so that I was able to remove myself from a lot of aspects of the business. And then I reevaluated what success looks like, right? Because a lot of times for high achievers, it's just the next big thing, but sometimes success is ambiguous, right? So for me, I just wanted to be the best, but I didn't know what that meant, right? And so I had to figure out what the best is, right? And so I ended up redefining that as the best version of me. And that included letting go of guilt, letting go of perfectionism, letting go of being a people pleaser, letting go of needing to control things, right? So that is a lot of the things that I ended up doing. And it ended up being a lot of that deep internal work of belief systems that I had formed when I was younger that no longer served me anymore. One of those really being that, like you said, the world is not going to fall apart if I'm not there, and when you're people pleasing or that perfectionism stuff, it actually is a belief system that it's like letting go of that ego, right? Because you believe that you are the best person for the job, but you can't do everything. And so I had to let that go. And what I found is as I was resting, and what that rest was, is it was spending time in nature, getting a hammock, right? Looking at the trees, reading books, right? Actual books, listening to audiobooks so that I can let my brain and my eyes take a break from screens and things like that. What I found is that rest for me is you can work, and when you're working, you're kind of hammering out a new container for yourself, right? You're expanding your container, but as you're doing that, you're expending your energy, and so you're draining it. And if you don't give yourself the time to rest, to sleep, to get good sleep, to meditate, to let your brain think about you and yourself and the things that you do, you won't allow yourself to feed with energy to fill that new container. So all of a sudden you will crash and burn because you're just hammering and hammering and hammering and hammering. And all of a sudden you won't have any energy left. Right. And that container will eventually crack. And that's what happened to me. So one of the things that I want to talk about, and I've been talking a lot this episode, so I'll turn it over to you. But you also were starting to feel a little bit of burnout too, because you carried a lot of the load. And when I was starting to heal, we switched. We gave you a couple weeks off, and I took over the load so that you could heal. Is really how to identify what burnout is, how to identify when you need to rest, when that container is emptying a little bit, and you might need to switch priorities and focus on yourself so that you can rest, fill back up your cup so that you can be back on your game. Because at the end of the day, it is about the quality. When you are at work, you want to give quality hours. You want to be intentional with your time so that when you're off, you can rest and fill your container back up. What are some signs for you that you notice when you're starting to burn out or feel too stressed?
For me, I noticed that I tend to want escapism.
Okay.
I tend to lean into patterns of getting away from who I am, right? Whether that's finding a video game that I can spend time in and being in a whole nother world that I can actually control, right? Because that's what we're talking about here is concentrating to be able to control and get a certain outcome. So I found myself doing the escapism to do that exact thing. And I noticed I would go to it too often because it's okay to have certain, you know, things that you enjoy that you go to, whether it's a nice TV show you want to watch, or maybe you do like playing video games or a certain hobby. It's great to have those things as outlets for your energy and to be able to enjoy. But if you're going to it so often and you're not getting the benefits of that, right? Where you're going to it as a go-to, but it's not fulfilling you. It's not giving you back what it should. Well, that potentially could be a sign that maybe you're starting to feel that burnout because video games lost its flavor for a while for me, where I just stopped playing. And it was because I wasn't, it was draining me. It was draining more than it was given back because I was escaping to it at the end of my day. But my brain was staying turned on. And then I'd go fall asleep, wake up, and then have to concentrate on work. And then I'd go repeat the cycle.
Mm, yeah. Escapism is a big thing for me. I love my job. Obviously, this business, I love it. That wasn't always the case in corporate, but for me, I find that I need some TLC. I need some rest when, or I need to check in with myself when I'm not feeling motivated by my job, when I don't have the passion, when there's no joy. So I think one of the things that I'm hearing when you're talking about video games is when you start to lose passion for the things that you love, right? When you're not motivated to do things that you're passionate about, your hobbies, things like that, that can be a really big sign for burnout, for stress, right? Because the things that you love, your passions, your hobbies, those things obviously are your passions for a reason, right? They motivate you, they get you excited. And when you're not feeling those things, when those things don't, turn you on, that's a big indicator. I was reading this article, and I have it up on my other screen over here, for those watching on YouTube. By the way, we're on YouTube. Check us out if you want to watch us live instead of listen to us. From psychologicalscience.org, which shows the 6 key components to workplace environment burnout. These 6 areas, when they are chronically mismatched between an individual and their job, this is when burnout can happen. And I thought it was really interesting. So the 6 areas are workload, so too much work, and that was a big thing for me. Control, reward, community, fairness, and values. So I want to break this down a little bit. So workload, so for instance, someone gets let go, they're not going to hire anyone else, so they're just going to spread the workload over. All of a sudden you're doing way too much. How often does that happen, right? Especially during the pandemic. Control. So for instance, you have a micromanaging boss and you feel like you don't have autonomy or control over your own work, or maybe you have coworkers that are controlling one piece of the project and you have another, and you just feel like you can't control your own work. Autonomy is a huge piece that employees, research shows, want. So if you're a leader and you're listening to this, check yourself, right? If you have employees that are burnt out, are you micromanaging? Do you need to let go of control a little bit, right? Reward. If people are not being paid fairly, if they're not being recognized, if they're not verbally being rewarded. A lot of times, I've also read a lot of research articles and surveys and things like that, that a lot of employees will prefer to be verbally appreciated by their boss more so than financially compensated. Community. So loving their group, loving their team, feeling connected with the culture. Fairness. That's pretty self-explanatory. If they don't feel like they're being treated fairly, absolutely. And values. So this is a huge one too. So when I was first working at my last corporate job, I absolutely aligned with the values of the company. And then about 4 years into it, it shifted, the culture shifted. And I stayed for an extra 2.5 years, because I was loyal and because I wanted it to get back, and it never did, right? And so that happens to a lot of people, right? Companies shift, their culture shift, their values shift, and then, or maybe you shift and you change and you're no longer aligned, and that can cause a lot of burnout. So there are a lot of signs of stress and burnout, right? Loss of focus, loss of concentration, losing memory problems, those types of things. Burnout affects your brain, the amygdala, a lot. So if you're having a lot of issues sleeping, being stressed, emotional distress, a lot of that can relate to burnout as well, and might be time for some rest. Jack, I know that you have some stats on what is good rest. We mentioned that scrolling through social media might not be the best idea for rest or for breaks.
Yeah. So fatigue can kick in, obviously, for a ton of different reasons, but best ways to kind of take breaks are get away from what you're currently concentrating on. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have X tasks in front of you, maybe there's some other tasks you could switch to that could give your mind a break or concentration a break. Maybe you could do more creative things, or just more admin type of tasks, something that's going to give your brain a little bit of a switch. The other things are really trying to make sure that if you do work on a computer, get away from the computer. Give your brain, give your eyes a break. And what does that look like? It could be meditation breaks. It could be reading. It could be going for a walk. It could be having a conversation, calling a friend, talking with somebody. There are so many different ways you can go through life and just kind of give yourself something that's going to be a little different. Don't be afraid to daydream. Watch something funny. Um, I These are the things that really are going to be different than the concentration. And studies show that if you have a break like this, you're going to be a lot more productive and a lot more willing to concentrate and do your job well if you are giving yourself breaks like this regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, that is our episode for now on work hard, rest hard. This is something that is really important to us. Um, you know, the parable or the fable, whatever it's called, of the tortoise and the hare, we have found that yes, you can get there, like we talked about, the fast way, the hustle way, the quick way, but it does tend to come with some repercussions, right? And so if you're building your own business, if you're entrepreneurship, or even just in work, right? When you're working in corporate, it's okay to take breaks. It is okay to take care of you. There is only one of you. And if you're taken out, then it doesn't matter how hard or slow you work because you won't be there, right? So you are your most important asset. Take care of yourself. And subscribe to the Dennison Download, right? Wherever you listen to podcasts, we are everywhere. We would love and greatly appreciate if you would subscribe, give us a 5-star review. We would really, really appreciate that. But in the end, sincerely, take care of yourself this week. Jack, any final words from you?
Just be willing to invest in yourself. And that's what taking breaks are. It's really investing in yourself and giving yourself the bandwidth to be able to do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Check us out on YouTube if you would rather watch us instead of listen to us. And again, subscribe to us from wherever you listen to your podcast, and from our family to yours. Have a great week.